Come on, give me a hand, will you, Ethel?
What's the matter? Can't you handle it by yourself?
No, I can't handle it by myself.
Now, we go forward.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Come on, give me a hand, will you? What's the matter? Can't you handle it by yourself? No, I can't handle it by myself. We go forward. Okay. Are you ready? Yeah. She made America laugh as Ethel Mertz on I Love Lucy. But behind the cameras, Vivian Vance was quietly seething. Her dislike for co-star William Frawley wasn't just a rumor. It was real. Why did she truly despise the man millions thought was her perfect comedic partner? And do you know to this day some people still think of me as Mrs. Fred Mertz? Join us as we uncover the real reason behind Vivian Vance's long-standing hatred for William Early Life Frawley. Vivian Vance. Vivian Vance was born on July 26, 1909 in Cherryville, Kansas. She was the second of 6 children in her family. Her birth name was Vivian Robera Jones. Even from a young age, she shows signs of being a performer. As a child, she loved music and acting, and she participated in school plays and local performances. However, her road to stardom was not smooth. Vivian's relationship with her family, especially her mother, was difficult. Her mother reportedly disapproved of her ambitions and thought performing was not a proper path for a young woman. But Vivian didn't let that stop her. She pushed forward, moving to Albuquerque, New Mexico in her early 20s. There she began working seriously in regional theater and took acting lessons while performing in local productions. Eventually, she made her way to New York City. It was there that she truly began to shine. Vivian performed in several Broadway shows in the 1930s and 1940s. Some of her notable appearances included the voice of the turtle, Skylark, and Hooey for What. Her talent was evident. She had a strong stage presence, great comedic timing, and a voice that suited musical theater well. Although she found success on stage, her transition to television didn't happen right away. For many years, she stayed mostly in theater. But all of that changed when she was introduced to a role that would define her career forever. Ethel Mertz on I Love Ethel Mertz on I Love Lucy Lucy. I Love Lucy. Vivian Vance's casting in I Love Lucy happened somewhat unexpectedly. At the time, Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz were preparing to launch the show that would become a cultural phenomenon. They needed someone to play Lucy's best friend and neighbor, Ethel Mertz. It had to be someone funny, likable, and able to hold her own next to Lucille Ball. Lucille Ball had a big say in the casting. When she met Vivian Vance, she saw something special. Even though others questioned the choice, thinking Vance might be too glamorous or too young, Lucille insisted she was right for the part. Vance won the role, and the two quickly built a close personal and professional bond. On I Love Lucy, Vivian played Ethel Mertz, the loyal but sharp-witted friend of Lucy Ricardo. Her on-screen husband, Fred Mertz, was played by William Frawley. The Mertzes were landlords to the Ricardos, and often found themselves pulled into Lucy's wild plans and antics. Ethel was usually the voice of reason, but not always. Sometimes she jumped into Lucy's schemes and added her own twist. Vivian's performance as Ethel Mertz struck a chord with audiences. She was relatable, funny, and down-to-earth. While Lucy was the wild dreamer, Ethel was the grounded, practical friend who still had her own sense of humor and spunk. This balance made their scenes together memorable and created some of the show's most iconic moments. Behind the scenes, Lucille Ball and Vivian Vance developed a genuine friendship. They trusted each other, supported each other, and had real chemistry that came through on screen. That connection helped make their performances stronger. Fans loved their dynamic, and their bond became one of the emotional pillars of the show. Vivian Vance became a household name. I Love Lucy was a massive hit and changed television history. But while it gave Vance fame, it also brought personal life and struggle challenges. Personal life and struggles. Vivian Vance's personal life was not as joyful as her on-screen performances. She was married 4 times, and many of those relationships were difficult or short-lived. Her marriages often ended in heartbreak or disappointment, which took a toll on her emotional well-being. Vance also struggled with mental health problems. She dealt with depression throughout her life, something that wasn't often discussed openly in those times. The pressure of fame, personal issues, and the demands of the entertainment industry added to her stress. There was also the issue of public perception. On television, Vance played a character who was older, less attractive, and less glamorous than she was in real life. Ethel Mertz was written as a frumpy, middle-aged housewife. Even though Vance was still in her early 40s when the show began, this affected how people saw her off-screen. Vivian was very aware of this image. It bothered her that the public began to associate her with Ethel so closely that they couldn't separate the character from the real person. In Hollywood, where appearance and youth often played a big role in casting, this was a serious concern. She felt that the role, while successful, might have hurt her chances of getting more varied and serious work later on. Despite the difficulties, Vance remained a strong performer. She didn't let her struggles show on camera, and she always gave her best in every scene. After I Love Lucy ended, Vivian Vance found it hard to escape the shadow of Ethel Mertz. She continued to work in television, appearing on The Lucy Show for several seasons. However, she was never able to fully break away from the character that had made her famous. Vance wanted to take on more serious roles. She wanted to do drama, maybe even return to the stage full-time. But casting directors and producers often saw her only as Ethel. The public expected her to be funny, plain, and always second to the star. This was frustrating for someone who had much more to offer. She also felt that her looks were being used against her. While Lucille Ball was allowed to stay glamorous and central to the story, Vance was pushed into being the funny friend who didn't get to shine in the same way. In interviews, Vance admitted that this bothered her deeply. She wanted recognition not just as a sidekick, but as a real actress with range and depth. Still, she kept working. She did guest appearances on other TV shows, stage performances, and even a few small film roles, but nothing ever reached the level of her success on I Love Lucy. Later in life, Vivian Vance moved to Connecticut with her final husband, John Dodds. She lived a quieter life away from the spotlight and focused in her health and well-being. Sadly, she was diagnosed with breast cancer in the late 1970s. She passed away in 1979 at the age of 70. Vivian Vance gave television one of its most iconic characters, but her journey was filled with personal battles, big dreams, and moments of deep frustration. Up next, we'll take a closer look at William Frawley, the man who played her on-screen husband, and find out why things got so tense between them off-camera. William Frawley. William Clement Frawley was William Frawley, born on February 26, 1887 in Burlington, Iowa. He grew up in a working-class Irish Catholic family and attended local schools. From an early age, he showed interest in entertainment, but it wasn't clear that acting would become his full-time career. Before he entered show business, Frawley worked several ordinary jobs, including as a court reporter and stenographer. However, NGS. Drinking habits decline. William Frawley was a lifelong bachelor. He never remarried after his brief marriage in the early 1900s. He was known to be very private about his personal life, and many details about his relationships, if he had any, were kept out of the public eye. He lived alone, and much of his life revolved around his work and his habits. One of the most talked about aspects of Frawley's life was his drinking. He had a long-standing problem with alcohol, which had caused him trouble throughout his career. During his time in Hollywood before I Love Lucy, several studios had reportedly stopped hiring him because of his behavior. There were stories of him getting into fights, being late to sets, and being difficult to work with, usually due to drinking. It's important to note, however, that during I Love Lucy, Frawley was reportedly very professional. He didn't drink on set, and he followed the rules Desi Arnaz had put in place. He did, however, continue drinking in his personal time. He was often seen at bars, and he had a routine of spending his evenings drinking alone or with friends. His drinking problem likely affected his relationships off-screen, too. He didn't maintain close friendships with many cast members. He had a famously bad relationship with Vivian Vance, and he wasn't known for being warm or friendly. Still, he was respected by some of his peers for his talent and old-school work ethic. After I Love Lucy ended in 1957, Frawley found new work fairly quickly. In 1960, he joined the cast of My Three Sons, a family sitcom starring Fred MacMurray. On the show, Frawley played Bob Ozzie, the boys' grandfather and caretaker. Once again, he brought his gruff charm to the role and became a popular part of the series. Frawley stayed on My Three Sons for 5 seasons. However, his health began to decline. Years of drinking and aging took a toll on his body. He began forgetting lines, moving slower, and showing signs of fatigue. In 1965, he left the show due to health concerns and was replaced by actor William Demarest. Not long after leaving the series, Frawley's health continued to get worse. He suffered from heart problems and other age-related issues. On March 3 RD, 1966, just a week after his 79th birthday, William Frawley collapsed on a sidewalk in Hollywood after watching a movie at a theater. He was taken to the hospital, but was pronounced dead shortly after from a heart attack. His death was met with mixed reactions. While many in the industry respected his long career and dedication to acting, others remembered him more for his difficult personality and conflicts with co-stars, especially Vivian Vance. Despite his flaws, William Frawley left a lasting impact on television history. His role as Fred Mertz became part of American pop culture there. Now you see how simple it is. Everything's going to be all right, huh? And his work helped shape the early days of TV comedy. He may not have been a perfect man, but he was a memorable performer who gave life to one of TV's most iconic characters. William Frawley's story was one of talent, trouble, and a second chance that paid off in a big way. Next up, we'll dive into the behind-the-scenes drama and explore why Vivian Vance and William Frawley just couldn't stand each other. Behind-the-scenes feud. When I Love Lucy began filming in 1951, Vivian Vance and William Frawley were just 2 working actors brought together to play a married couple. At first, their relationship was reportedly civil. They didn't know each other before the show, and both were experienced professionals. According to Greg Oppenheimer, the son of the show's producer, Jess Oppenheimer, they even got along quite well at first, but it didn't take long for things to start going downhill. One of the earliest sources of tension was Vance's discomfort with the casting decision. She was in her early 40s when the show began. Frawley, on the other hand, was in his mid-60s. That meant a more than 20-year age gap between them. To make things more difficult, the script treated Fred and Ethel as a long-married average couple with little mention of any age difference. Vance thought it was hard to believe that the audience would accept them as a married pair. She reportedly said, "No one will believe I'm married to that old coo." This statement got back to Frawley, and he did not take it well. Frawley was known for having a short temper and didn't appreciate criticism, especially from younger actresses. When he heard Vance's remarks, it deeply offended him. He didn't hide his frustration and started making comments about Vance in return. Over time, these early disagreements turned into something more serious. Frawley would mock Vance behind her back, calling her unflattering names and criticizing her abilities. One of Opie's early complaints was that she couldn't sing well, and had no business offering input during musical scenes. He also disliked how she sometimes tried to give suggestions on their dance numbers. Frawley thought she was overstepping her role, and this made him even more resentful. Meanwhile, Vance became more and more irritated by his attitude. The tension between them grew and their